I want to address the elephant in the room, and it's environmentalism and climate change. Because there's a lot of propaganda behind it, and I don't need to reiterate or retread or go in laps chasing my own tail about all these ideas that have come to the fore and into the public sphere that have been, the information and the statistics and, the scientists, climate Scientologists that have been completely ignored. And, in the age after an inconvenient truth, where not that it was the first time that it came to public concern, because there's been years and decades and centuries of pollution and environmental abuse, and wastefulness that is incurred with the establishment of for-profit mentality, right? Especially in aviation. I'll be honest with you. Like the CEOs will say it themselves. There's no way that they'd be able to establish the companies that they have with all the new regulations, and they more or less, like, I'll take the example of a company out west, and having sat at the boardroom table with him talking about it, that is basically impossible to run an operation of that size with the amount of fees and regulatory kickbacks, so to speak, to the government, and the incentives to change and to renovate are very small, right? And you consider I've watched so many documentaries about this, and I went to Greenland. I did. I understand the sensitivity of Arctic climates, and I stood on an iceberg. I did. Now, whether you believe me or not, I don't give a shit, because I was there, man. You weren't, right? And I did that as part of a Greenland expedition in 2015. So this was the Lost Squadron, the P-38s and the B-17s, and then the Ducks, which was an MIA Forgotten Soldier project. The second attempt, led by a gentleman named Ken McBride out of California, and obviously we didn't succeed this time. There's only so much you can do, and he was trying to do it on a wing and a prayer. And you consider all the logistics involved and the challenges involved, and then trying to get people to go that are crazy enough or skilled enough to go into a confined space, 200 foot underneath the ice. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that, no problem, right? Like I crawl into a fuel tank, and I'll sleep inside a fuel tank, right? Like with proper gear. And I've worked inside of wind turbine blades and in extremely hostile environments. So what would it matter to me? We just figure out the safety protocol and dig two holes, right? And never and then have like a seismometer or something along those lines, and make sure that you don't have any tremors and you don't have any collapses, because it's a very high risk situation. And again, without the proper equipment, it's you don't even go. But a lot of challenges involved, and possibly some bad actors, stateside or whatever it was, didn't want him to have any prestige, because McBride himself and his mentor, I don't remember his name, I'm sorry, and then it was Lee Atkinson. He's a photographer from Australia, and myself were there at Kulasuk, and what was it, in May or something along those lines. It's on my Instagram. You can go and see it. These are irreplaceable photographs, and I've promoted the photographs in Iceland and Greenland as much as I can. But obviously, I wasn't getting the attention that I deserve. If I'm going to act a little bit more psychopathic, but I've always been trying to prove to myself and to others that you can do impossible things with next to nothing. Because that's what I am. I am what I am by the deeds and the accomplishments that I've and like the pathways that I've walked. To lead by example, so to speak, right? And I don't blame him. He did help me get there, and he did help me get back, right? I didn't have a lot of money. I was working at the South Canoe Wind Turbine Project through the agency, and frankly, it wasn't enough money, right? I'll tell you that the agencies, these headhunters, these third-party, human resources companies. Some of them were advented for the need and necessity, but over time they've become absolutely evil. And frankly, I don't support them. I'd rather have a union for aviation and other trades within Canada and the United States, because it's absolutely essential, right? Like I just can't keep repeating the same pattern, because it causes people too much stress, and it causes the death of the family, and the death of the human spirit, the esprit de corps, inside of every contractor and of every employee, right? This is why AOG exists. You have like I've worked for AOG company before out of Toronto, and Johnny on the spot sort of mentality, and very capable people in being aircraft medics, so to speak. Right, so you have Bombardier's rapid response team, or other manufacturers, say like Boeing or whatever, to take on the largest and toughest jobs in any corner of the world, and just like the military, right? And that's extremely hard to accomplish as a private or a commercial operation. So kudos to anyone that runs that kind of that setup, because that was always my idealism in the first place with my business mentality. Again, I'm looking at my 5 or 6 man crew with a helicopter, a cargo aircraft, and some ground support vehicles. Like very much like a special forces operation, like SAS, right? But civilian, because there's no replacement for aircraft, right? And the most environmental thing to do is to keep old aircraft flying, because the amount of waste that's involved in the manufacturing process, and because of traceability, and it's a big thorn in the side of many manufacturers and of many repair facilities, that they have to do this, because if it goes out, if it expires, right? Say the consumables have a shelf life, especially if it's chemical. Eventually it all breaks down to its base elements. That's called entropy. There's nothing you can do about it, right? And then you have a history of Superfund sites and environmental contamination and disasters, say like Centralia in Pennsylvania, or the heavy metals that were the mountains of the stuff that used to be, or the byproducts of ammunition production plants, or actually I would call the old Kodak plant in Toronto to be a Superfund site, or old decommissioned power plant areas, your PCBs and whatnot, DDT, and lead poisoning, and carbon monoxide and contamination. A lot of the factories from the old era within Detroit are not areas that you really want to go exploring anymore. That's why they demolished the Packard plant, or Flint, Michigan, with the water contamination, or fracking sites that that break into the water table by accident, or by neglect, or by ignorance and as I said, negligence of the dirty dozen, out of a lack of education or assertion by people. There's a lot of different industrial problems that we can't continue to do, and this is naturally so. As is the river, you got to go with it. And if I'm going to speak about contaminated rivers, what's the most contaminated river in the world? I'll let you go look that up, and then you trace the history and the lineage and the corruption that's behind it, and that's the best example in the world. And the people from that country are some of them are trying to do the best they can, but it's an uphill battle because of the organization of the society, right? And so what can I say? I wish them a lot of luck, but it's a very same with the third world. We use the third world as a trash basket. And you're thinking about say like the shipbreaking in Bangladesh, and what those people have to go through using torches, oxyacetylene in confined spaces, and exposing themselves to carbon monoxide and other off-gassing, say like iron oxide and so on and so forth, or even let's see what else, or say like the sulfur mines. I don't remember exactly where those are. That's from Business Insider, and Ontario is not innocent either, right? We have a lot of stamping plants. We have forges, and we have the Dow chemical plants and DuPont. We have Sarnia. There is the example of the decreasing birth rate. This was more than a few years ago. The study was done of the Native community that a male embryo is much more fragile, right? The X and Y, so the Y chromosome is very unstable, right? Chemically speaking, so when you have any kind of interference with it, then you get another woman, or you get an intersex child, and then you have a whole new cornucopia of disaster. Let's put it like that. And this is why I don't support electric vehicles. The environmental, the unintended consequences, and the involvement of slavery with the harvesting of rare earth elements is just frankly not something that I want to get involved in. If people are out there that are really good engineers and have good hearts and are really trying to find a new solution, say with like moonshots and trying to harvest asteroids that pass by and throwing, taking a rocket motor and propelling it up into the heavens and then attaching it to an asteroid and having it propelled into let's say a low Earth orbit, so that at one point it goes into retrograde and then it's controllable, and you can actually calculate where the trajectory is going to land, and it's somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Like, oh hey, no problem, right? A designated landing spot. There's reason for dreaming, and there's reason for optimism for the future, because if we put our heads together and we stop thinking about the money and power, we start going for more of a utilitarian. And I'm going to say I'm more of a Star Trek fan than I am a Star Wars fan, but I appreciate both. And I understand the operatic and drama that's involved in it, but of course there's limitations because of the technology of this day. But these science fiction, the science fiction has been inspiration for so many different projects, right? It's always the creative person, the intellect of the creative person that inspires the engineers to figure out a way to do something that would be otherwise never conceived and never thought of before, and completely changes the world. There's people out there that are a lot smarter than me in this regard. I'm just a Kerbal space expert, right? Like I got very little experience with this, and I get frustrated with the UI of that program. Hence why this, I hope there's some improvements with the second one, and I'm very happy that the first one existed in the first place. There's a lot of aerospace engineers out there that use that for fun, and I still don't consider myself an aerospace engineer yet. I need a lot more education, because a lot of the stuff that I've done is practical, and I'm looking for more theoretical. I'd rather have an apprenticeship with someone, because the life experiences of other people, and the oral tradition and the written tradition. So you're talking about tribal knowledge here, of people that have gone before, right? We stand on the shoulders of giants, and they've had to deal with problems that we would never think of, right? And so, obviously I'm showing as much respect as possible, and without, detracting from the successes, from at least a somewhat objective viewpoint, because, we can't have industry without the environment, and vice versa, because of all the modern conveniences that we have now, that we've become so adapted to and so reliant upon, that the ICE is not dead. It's not, right? The hybrid technology is, in my opinion, the best. And when I was in Kelowna, they were starting to construct a hydrogen pilot project for fuel. So that's very interesting to me. There was always the misconception and the negative connotations associated with hydrogen or nuclear power, and it really doesn't take very much. You think about the inventiveness of nuclear physicists, and we're talking like CERN, or we're talking of thorium reactors, and ITER. That's a very interesting. The fusion reactor. It looks like a donut. Yeah, pink donut fusion. I've been keeping track of that for a while, and it really scares the shit out of me, to be honest with you. Oof. As most new technology does to the uninitiated, because any advance in technology to the layman is the same as magic, right? Like the fact that I'm doing this from a phone, right? This was impossible 20 years ago. It was impossible for me to upload it as quickly as possible. I would have had to have had a production team. I had to have like a shoulder-mounted camera or camcorder or whatever on a tripod, mechanically activated, something along those lines, to transfer it from, say, like from CDs or a tape, and digitize it, and it would be a much more involved process. And you talk about the advances in solid-state drives, and how much speed and capacity, according to Moore's law, that we squeezed out of the silicone chips. And we're talking about say like quantum computing, right? Superposition, and so on and so forth. And what can I say? I'm the stupidest guy in the world, right? I learn all this stuff from the internet. I know theoretical. I understand some of it, but I'll leave that to somebody else, right? Like, yeah, I'll leave that to someone else. I got projects of my own in my head. And like, again, when we're talking about batteries, I'm not a hater, right? If you watch this, man, or like, what's it, the other Icon, what's it, Rivian, the other, these other avant-garde electric car producers, good on you for trying, and keep trying to improve the technology. This the supercapacitor, in my opinion, is most likely to be the best option. And I know you made a lot of strides and accomplishments with the superchargers. But if we're going to talk about automotive and technology and waste and the environment, and the propaganda that's involved with it, and then involve it back to the military, Because what's the idiom that the military has technology that's 20 or 50 years more advanced than what is in the civilian world, and frankly, that's, well, if you remember, we remember correctly, and we study it. If I'm remembering, the Stanford and what's it? The internet, DARPA. That's it, DARPA. Right? And I'm not afraid of robotics and of Boston Dynamics. Like that's fucking scary. The drone technology is really crazy. The fact that drones have been worked on and developed since the 1940s with radio frequency, and that correlates to, say, missile technology and so on and so forth, and radar. And the radar museum here in Canada is located in the ponds. And I just posted something on Instagram where I'm very pissed off that people don't pick up their trash, because it's an environmentally sensitive area, and it's a spring-fed aquifer, and it's one of the largest and most significant in the area. It's a very large wetland, and it gets very muddy. And the Rotary Club used to put bags down of wood chips in order to deal with the soil erosion, but people were stealing it for their own gardens instead of taking it in there, so they stopped doing it, and that's very disappointing. Like, I've been I've been here in this condo in and out since 2007. As a student at Fanshawe and Sioux College, through my career as an aircraft mechanic, and the rest of my current and past adult life up to this date, in April of 2023. And London has a history of, there's something that was called the Great Flood, right? And we're right on the banks of the Thames River here. And there's been a lot of runoff in the past from previous industrial and also from the farmlands, right? Because phosphorus, and you talk about other contamination. Like I've said in other videos, if you're on hormones or you're on birth control or any kind of medication, don't flush it down the drain. It fucks us all up. It turns the frogs gay, okay? It really does. And I was very happy to hear the bullfrogs and the chirps of the leopard frogs, and the ponds, again, where the radar museum is behind Parkwood, which is the Veterans Hospital, and also behind the mental hospital, is a very rich and healthy ecosystem. And it takes a lot of effort. There's not a rod and gun club, but a fishing and game club that's also here, that it's just tucked back from the road on Southdale, and they take responsibility for a lot of that. And sportsman club, and sportsmen, again, are going to get more political, especially concerning the things that I love, right? Like gun ownership and conservation, right? Again, we have to have this healthy relationship that's balanced, where we respect the environment and understand that it's a finite resource. But sometimes, recycling is far more effort to separate than it is to manufacture new. So again, there's this balance, and there's this expectation of perfection, but it's not always possible, and that's where mistakes happen, right? Because you have all of this pressure, this outside pressure on the political policy and on industry, and we can't demonize people just because we hate and we're manipulated by the media, because the media machine that manufacturers consent, right, to hate these people is what profits off of your ignorance and your not insolence, but the fire, right? The fire and the passion that the jerk reaction that happens in the programming. This again, the propaganda, right? Because marketing is the same as propaganda, right? It's weaponized artwork. It targets a certain audience, and you have to have media literacy, and that again, that's part of the message, right? And I love tuner cars. I love high horsepower. I love anything that moves, right? I fucks with it, mechanically and women wise, right? Let's be clear about that. No misinterpretations. Thank you very much. Okay. Because I know people are out there. They're gonna watch this and they'll be like, oh, "What the fuck is he talking about?" He looks like a fucking faggot. Oh, you like Subarus, huh? He sucks dick. Fucking dick brush in his mouth. There's an old joke there. I'm not gonna say it for lewdness sake. But this shift and this push, this propaganda of the electric vehicle. Again, somebody profits from it, and I'm not in opposition. I just, I see things differently because of, again, from the finite resources and the environmental contamination. Hence why it's more environmentally conscious to keep an old aircraft going and to keep an old car going as best as possible, because the parts are far easier to refurbish than the entire thing, right? How much effort it takes to manufacture a brand new car. Right, the example that I would take is BMW, and there's that documentary that because of planned obsolescence and the always this turnover, this quick cycle of styling and so on and so forth, trying to keep up and snap new customers from other car companies, that it's damaging, and the damage is permanent. We can't get it back. Like once the material has been processed and put into the ground, like wind turbines. Wind turbines, the fiberglass, the resin, it doesn't decompose. When you bury a wind turbine blade, it's there for fucking ever. Right? And at the top of a wind turbine, there's a huge reservoir of oil to lubricate the gearbox, and to deal with the hydraulics of some of these turbine blades. They have pitch control in order to maintain constant velocity in the same way as you would approach an aircraft for peak efficiency, right? Because the rotational speed, you imagine, for something of that long is like 48 to 52 meters on these blades, and they're pretty much going supersonic at that point, right? You don't hear it, but the resonance and the vibration is disturbing to the environment. And the birds use just like a hammerhead shark, they use a sixth sense, right, and sensation of the electromagnetic fields to navigate, because they don't always rely on dead reckoning, seeing where landmarks are, right? It depends on the animal very much so. And again, this is not information that everybody considers or knows of. You got to correlate things together in order to understand. You have to have a much larger picture in order, of the macro, in order to understand the entire ecosystem and our interaction and our involvement in it with each and every decision that we have. Especially considering the technology, right? This is why I buy used, and why I bought this phone, is because I'm not into this frequent, turnover, like fast fashion, right? You consider the dyes and globalism and how it bounces all across the world, and it's a complete and utter failure. Globalism is a fucking failure. Environmentalism is a fucking failure. Climate change is a fucking failure. because the climate is always changing. And if you look at the data, the carbon follows the temperature changes, right? There's a fellow that I don't remember his name, but he did a lot of research, and he was called a heretic, right? Because he was opposition, and he stood alone, right? And this is the data, right? Where do I come from? Where did I get my education? Trent University. What's Trent University known for? It's known for forensics, it's known for environmental science, and the humanities. Those are the three things that it's really known for. And let's not forget the chemistry, right? There's a reason why, we have to consider the size and the sustainability, right? I don't agree with the UN, because the UN is fucking stupid now. They're fucking idiots, to be honest with you, right? This Agenda 21 and the sustainability goals, it's completely corrupted. It looks good on the surface, but it's complete and utter fucking rotten, right? It's completely rotten. It's now used as a means of manipulation, and it's used as profiteering by psychopathic people that have lost touch with what it is to be alive, because they don't put their boots on the ground. They don't get their hands dirty. They sit at the top of their very narrow $50 million condos in New York around Central Park, right? These super slim skyscrapers, and they're not even there half the time, right? And whether or not, I don't give a shit about their motivations for real estate speculation or for any of the prestige or the bragging rights that they have. Oh, look, this is where I put my asset. It's fucking stupid, okay? It's fucking stupid. And I don't have time for this shit as an engineer, as a maintenance engineer, right? Even though at this time I don't have my license because of the fees involved, because of the racketeering and the environment and the protectionism by the government to keep people out, especially ingenious and motivated individuals. Because that's the truth of the matter. Because the governments at large, if they're ruled by stupid people and people without forethought and without vision and without planning, that just want instantaneous gratification, and they want a job thereafter in the private sector to retire on a couple $1 million, but you got a $250,000 pension when you leave per year, basically, or whatever it is. And sometimes 350 for some Senate members once you retire from public life. What the fuck more do you want? What do you want? I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. Okay? This is why I go after toxic femininity, this female chauvinism, this manipulative tactic, these manipulative tactics, the narcissism, the psychopathy, the sociopathy, and all the paths to those. I don't know what the hell that is, or whoever the heck that was, and all these paths to ruin, right? All these roads that lead to ruin, because we just can't do this anymore, right? We're in a post-industrial society now, and there's so many useless jobs out there, right? There's so many people that just go into the office and they don't do dick all. They're just there. They're just 2 feet in a heartbeat, right? They have no functionality. They're just there to increase the overall running cost of the company itself, and because of the changes in technology, that they therefore become redundant, and hence this is what was observed with COVID, right? The remote work and so on and so forth. People started understanding that you can do a lot of work from pretty much anywhere. And I support AI up to a certain point, right? I don't want, and we shouldn't rely on that because of the inherent biases of the creators. This is again in the articles. that the belief system and the identity of the people that do the coding is infused into the very work that they do. And like, this is why, I don't believe that, the artist can be separated, or the engineer can be separated from the work that they do. How can I, knowing me, right, and using the technology at this point, and, if we're going to go by, classical terminology or concepts like Mother Earth, right, and Father Time, we can't do anything without oil. I've always tuned or tried to seek a new precedence and I really enjoy this, taking something broken and discarded and turning it into, the underdog story, right? The Rudy story, the impossible, achieving the impossible from absolutely nothing. The old Rocky Balboa thing. Because those stories, the pursuit of happiness, Slumdog Millionaire, the things that inspire us to do more with our lives. Because what other choice do we have? Identify, if we're going to get into some psychology here, I identify with Will from Good Will Hunting. I do. And my family, especially on my father's side, we're scrappers and have been scrappers. Like, I still go to the scrap yard. I pick up materials when I can from the side of the road or whatever, and we take it to the scrap yard here in London. At least one of them is Zubik's, and there's a lot of automotive recyclers around here because, well, the Accuride and Prestran, and I'm feeling, and there used to be, the Crown Victoria plant, the Ford plant in St. Thomas. The international plant, Sterling, right, in St. Thomas. All of these, and then the associated support industry for logistics. Say like, the Dewey's and importing companies, that are completely gone now because of the evisceration and the support of globalism. Because the pollution involved is just not consciously ethical. How can I support that as an environmentalist, right? And this is why the climate Scientologists were committing suicide for a long period of time. It's because they were saying, guys, it doesn't fucking matter if the climate is changing. If you don't change this, right? If we don't change how much condensation nuclei and like the concentration of the acidity in the air, right? Acid rain. If we don't consider that, then we're all fucking dead, right? Because it changes the alkalinity of the soil and the water, and then all of a sudden we got bleached fucking coral reefs, right? We have leaks from from oil derricks because of the corrosiveness of the water and the erosion from the constant assault of the waves, right? Like, I've been around people that have worked on the oil platforms out east, right, in the Atlantic. This one fellow that I remember, he was also an aircraft mechanic. So as far as I can tell, he probably worked on the helicopters or whatever on the derrick out there. And you learn a lot from other people. And if you don't learn from other people, you're fucking stupid. If you're not sitting there, you're not listening more than you're talking, I can't help you, okay? I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, and it hurts me to think like that, because of course I want to inflate my ego and say that I am, but the easiest way to find the stupidest person in the room is just to observe and see who's talking the most, right? Who's trying to dominate the conversation. instead of being open and aware of the communication that is happening. Because again, if you go by psychological principles, and again, the psychology really matters when it comes to environmentalism, right? If we're not looking after we're not cleaning up our bedrooms, right? We're not making our beds, we're not organizing, we're not having any kind of discipline, then it's your fucking school bus. Go ahead and crash it, okay? I am not responsible as a preemanating or an emerging public figure for your actions. And actions speak louder than words. Let's not forget about that, okay? We all need to participate in this good reset, right? I like that concept where, it's more buy local, stay local. And I just can't stand the evisceration of local small businesses and the choking out for racketeering and monopolies. And this, we go even further because, the pollution of the body with the addictions that cause diabetes, like Super Size Me and that whole, the fast food, this fast instant gratification, enslavement, there's again, many paths to ruin. But it all starts with an individual choice. Do I participate or do I decide to let it happen? Apathy. So, with this in mind, and knowing the thermal efficiency and the potential of the ICE, that this is how I planned out my legacy, right? My Subaru legacy, in that my familiarity with turbines. And historically, what's the GM, the Chrysler car, the turbine car, that it has an extremely high efficiency, right? Because it's always cycling, right? And then through a reduction gearbox, that's usually how turboprops work. You get a select RPM, right? You get a certain burn rate, and you just let her fly, right? And it just goes and goes and goes and goes, because it's all the only moving part in it is the turbine itself, in between the stators and the stators and the vanes, right? Because jet engines, right, are especially she's unhappy because I left the screen door down there, so I'm just gonna go open that. We'll come back in a second here. Logistics, right? Close the door and that one. And what was it? Jet engines, turbos, Subarus, high compression, thermal efficiency, right? There's got to find a way to, with the ICE, to harness with a heat exchanger. More so, improving the, especially this is the first thing that you should do with the turbo Subaru, is get a bigger rad. Decrease the operating temperature so that it doesn't lift the head, because heat plus compression equals distortion, and a changing of frequency as as the cylinder wants to do this and move around, because the ring gap, right? This ring gap is most important. And again, this is all stuff that I've learned from other people. And I know, like, I got an ace up my sleeve on my bug eye, right? I spent a significant amount of money on it, but I have something to prove with it. So I hope the Minister of Finance and that I hope the Minister of Finance and Revenue Canada will forgive me in the fact that it's all public record, right? And obviously, I've been trying to accomplish something, and I've chosen to drive more often than fly, because it's prohibitively expensive to haul my 500 pounds of fucking tools on an aircraft with my body and all my stuff. and then go and get a rental car, right? And then go and find a place to live for a while, right? If it's not supported or if it's not supplied by the agency, you know, by the placement agency, and it's just absolutely, you know, a terrible experience otherwise. You know, so you lose independence and you lose mobility and you lose, you know, esprit de corps. You lose the motivation to even be there. She's being a guard dog. Not everyone's a criminal. Some of us are just trying to get some shit done. What is criminal is neglect of the environment. And again, I can't support the continuation of and the propaganda behind the carbon taxation and these carbon credits and this whole this whole globalist idealism, because, you know, it affects people. It really does affect people. And I talked to and met a woman, a young, like she's in her 30s, like myself, and she's the ship's second mate on an oil tanker, okay, and you know, of course, she's out of port most of the time on the ocean, and that's what she does for a living. But her family's somewhere else, and she never sees them. Right? Imagine that's actually what happened for years with sailors, right? Before, you know, women got more involved with the merchant marine and so forth after the Second World War. You know, I'm not saying that women shouldn't be sailors, but, you know, since I'm a bit more traditional, I would rather just not be involved in that kind of lifestyle. And because of the, you know, it's very much like being a military person or being a contractor, in which you're always away, right? You're always away. And then, it's, you know, this is what my mentor said to me, you know, the veterans, they're like, you know, you're always away. And by the time that you come back, it doesn't matter how much money that you spent, your family is fractured, your wife is mad at you, and your kid doesn't even know your name. And then you spend all your time fixing all your equipment, you know, if you got a farm, or fixing your house, and you don't have any time to relax, and you spend all your time organizing and just trying to keep it all together, and it's way too stressful. It's not worth the money, you know. So it breaks up families, right? Aviation-induced divorce syndrome. You know, a lot of people threw these out, right, because of bisphenol A, right? And I might have said this in another video, but Nalgene's, that only comes out if you put hot liquids in it. If you don't follow instructions, then that's your fate, right, for not following the instructions. If you don't read and understand what you're getting into, or when you buy a product and you don't read the instruction manual, and if you don't know how to fix it, you shouldn't be really working on it, unless you have previous experience or you have someone around you, because you can get buried and frustrated in an uphill battle, and, you know, you end up damaging yourself or the thing that you're working on in the process. And hence why I gave the engine project and the building thereof for my bug eye to a fella in Ottawa, which I'm very thankful. And he's very skilled. He's very passionate, and he's named his claim to fame is actually a 10-second bug eye, right? That old Fast and the Furious mentality. And so I know that it's going to be a fucking monster, right, when it's finished. And again, I have something to prove in the fact that, you know, if you give something to the correct people and you have enough resources, this is always the engineer's dilemma, right? That you have to balance durability, longevity, and power, right? You pick two, so to speak. There's other metrics for which they go by, and the different mentalities and the changing thereof. You know, again, especially, you know, this something that happened to Toyota was the, you know, the Johnny on the spot, you know, the rapid response, only enough supply to sustain production and not much more. But that's an issue because obviously they ran into production faults and delays of delivery and reliance upon semiconductor production from China, right? And this is, you know, we make deals with the devil, so to speak, and everybody makes mistakes, you know. But again, there's been people that have been manipulated into these positions by the very slick and the very smooth in these business deals, and then given kickbacks and special lunches and prostitutes and whatever else, you know, the old bribery thing, collusion and corruption that happens, and that's actually part of humanity, and that's why we have to stand up to it. You know, that's why when I actually get down to the nitty gritty and have the facility to really go forward with steel aerospace structures, that it most likely will be a B company in to be, you know, accountable to the Canadian military, the Legion, and say like Ducks Unlimited or something along those lines, right? Some environmental conservation-minded organization, right? Because this is how it has to be. We have to keep each other accountable. Otherwise, you know, we're all dead. We're all dead. And then our egos get too large and we get too big to fail. These are all the lessons that we need to learn so that we avoid this onslaught and this dominance of the propaganda, right? This message, this weapon that hijacks us all and turns us all into slaves, right? You know, as is the river. Every wave is new wave. You know, obviously you're going to have people who want to rise to power, right? And they're going to use and manipulate the means of distribution with the information to dominate, right? And this is why I'm not happy with a lot of the media corporations, but you know, I don't blame them for trying to stay in business. You know, we all got to make a living at some point, but things got to change. You know, we can't keep this up. You know, because whether you like it or not, when you're at the top, right, you're at the top of the mountain. And I could speak from experience, having hiked from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. You know, you can't stay up there. You're way too exposed, right? You got to come back down again. You got to come back down again and come back down to earth with everyday people. That's why, you know, the Japanese have this this mentality, well known obviously, where the CEO is on the floor with everybody else, and he knows and understands what's going on in almost every single moment throughout the day, and he has a relationship with the people, right? Boots on the ground general, right? That's why people liked Hilliard a whole lot, if I remember correctly about that. This is these and other leaders of the past, you know, where you're not, you know, you come up from the ranks, so to speak. These are the best people, and this is what I've been trying to do with my aerospace career, is because I understood that there was a disconnect between the theoretical and the practical. In that, you know, again, there was too many pilots, right? There's just too many fucking pilots after 9/11. So it wasn't practical to continue on with that, you know, and I would be fighting tooth and nail with people that I don't want to fight tooth and nail with, right? Because they're my brothers and they're my sisters, and that's the nitty gritty details there, and this is why, again, anyone that drives a turbo car or a supercharged car will understand that they're different animals and they need to be treated differently. They need to be respected, just like the environment. You can't hammer on the environment just like you can't hammer and force your way through with the Subaru. The peak efficiency is of course due to the vibration, right? The oscillation and the tuning, which is the very definition thereof, where it's humming, right? The old school guys, what they would do, if from the stories that I hear, is they would knock, okay, so you got the stethoscope, and you're listening to hear the interaction and the interference of all the surfaces, and if you'll hear the grinding or whatever else, to know if there's any kind of lack of lubrication. That's how good those guys were, right? That's all they did. They didn't have digital instruments. All they had was their senses and their wits. That's all they had. They didn't have they didn't have digital calculators. They had to do things by mechanical calculation. They had to do it by long division, by calculus, and computation and statistics, right? They had that way. This is where we lost something in the education system with the digital era. That again has been exacerbated by the propaganda, right? The weapon that stabs us all in the back because we just continue to allow it to happen. We just keep this up, and nobody seems to understand or want to stop it, because there's so many people that profit off of it in the backs of everybody else. This worldwide slavery. Freedom is the spirit of humanity. There's so many ways to make life more efficient. And that's the engineer's dilemma, right? We think that we can, I'll identify, but again, I still don't think that I am. We can change the world if we want to. But it takes all of us together. And that's collectivism. It's about oil. It always has been.